Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. I want this report to be called A Tale of Tales. And there's a lot of meaning in this, so I want to get into it and explain to you what happened. I was spending my first day on the water. I was waiting for northern pike, and I had a strike. And I hooked it, and just before that strike, I had two other really heavy fish hooked. And I lost both of them. I didn't get the hooked up right or something, or they didn't strike the way they should have to get the hook in them. So this third fish, I'm really trying to horse in, and I'm thinking all of it. I kept thinking, this isn't fighting the same. It's different, and I get it closer to me and closer, and I'm waiting out in the water, and I'm out about in water up to my waist, and I see the fish, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I've hooked a monster bass. Now, keep in mind, it's not bass season. And I was using a big 6-inch, it's a special bait, and it's called a lunker hunt gambit. You can look it up because there aren't many places to sell it. The only place I've ever found it is in Dixon, Watertown. And it's a very special soft plastic with a hook buried in the soft plastic so you can bring it through the weeds bait that I fish like a dying, fluttering fish that's fluttering and trying to get by, and the fish know it, and they think it's easy prey, and they hit it. So anyway, getting back to my bass coming in, I get it closer and closer, and I'm like, people won't believe me. They won't believe the size of this fish. I didn't even know that there were any bass in this pond that come close to this size. I mean, it was a giant, folks. It's one of the biggest in my entire life. So I get it in, and fortunately, the bait isn't too badly, it's not really embedded in its mouth, but the hook was really hooked in to the tissue in the upper part of its upper jaw. So I get the hook out, I'm looking, and I'm like, wait a minute. Look at that stomach. There's giant tails coming out of the stomach. And so what had happened is this bass had been going on some kind of a feeding spree where it was attacking other small fish. I don't know what the tails were. In other words, I wasn't going to pull them out of this unbelievably healthy, giant largemouth bass. But the tails were twice the size of the tails on the 6-inch bait that I was throwing for northern pike. So that bass was really eating big stuff. And the lesson that came to me is, number one, we never know just how big those fish might be. And the reason it was big is it was gobbling up some awful big other things. When I held that bass up out of the water as I was standing there, and I'm like, my gosh, this thing weighs a ton. That was before I noticed that it had a ton of other fish in its stomach. But it was a monster. I do believe it was over 7 pounds. Anyway, this report is called The Tale of Tales. And it's a story about catching a giant bass with tails sticking out of its mouth. One other time this happened to me, I was fishing in Beauchesne, and I was fishing in the spring on a sandbar that was only 2 or 3 feet deep, no structure on it, and it's where the smallmouths would come in. And up in Beauchesne, there was a lot of bass that could be caught earlier in the year. And so that's what I was fishing, a bucktail jig, and I caught this giant lake trout in 2 or 3 feet of water. And that lake trout was in feeding on, guess what? Smallmouth bass. And the reason I know is we kept that trout, and it became mounted, and it became sort of a testament to my life's fishing on the wall. And when the taxidermist went to mount that fish, he took out a 3-pound smallmouth from its stomach. That's how big a fish. And a bass will eat some awful big stuff. So the next time you go fishing, the next time you go bass fishing, don't be afraid to throw some really big baits out there. They might catch you the bass of a lifetime. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.